Sorry, what was that? We're good? Okay, so we're reopening this meeting to the public. And we are at the consent agenda number 4. Several sets of minutes. Would someone like to move the consent agenda?
Chair, I would like to request that we remove 4.2.1 and 4.2.5 from the consent agenda. And I'd like to put them under 8.4 when we're talking about climate action. And the
Okay.
report. Seconded by Director DeMare. No, Director DeMare has something as well.
Yeah, I want to 4.2.6.
Okay. Yeah.
6. Okay.
Okay.
Those removals, a motion to accept the consent agenda by Director DeMare.
Okay. So with those 3 items pulled, we'll move and call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes?
Where are we going to put 4.2.6? We didn't
10.6 under
at
CFA.
10.6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. Any business arising from the minutes? Don't see any hands. Okay, let's go along to committee reports. 6.1.1 Portal Cove Campground OCP and zoning amendment, first reading. Do we have staff reporting on this?
We do.
There we are, Ms. Dewar. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will give a brief overview of the Portal Cove Campground OCP and zoning amendment first reading staff report, and then I'm happy to take any questions that the board may have. So the SLRD received a development application for a campground on a 7.27 hectare parcel of land adjacent to the existing Portal Cove Provincial Park, which currently includes 60 campsites. The existing site uses include aggregate extraction and undisturbed forested sites. The application proposes a 44 tent campsites, 42 RV campsites, and 1,740 meters squared of an amenity commercial building, which includes 16 one-bedroom staff accommodations and a caretaker suite. According to the development application, the site presents an excellent opportunity for reclamation of an aggregate extraction land use and to provide for a recreation amenity that is in high demand in the Sea to Sky corridor. So the current rural resource 3 zoning and the resource management OCP designation does not provide for campground use, thus the need for a zoning and OCP amendment application, and these applications are being processed concurrently. The staff can confirm that the site can accommodate the proposed number of campground sites, associated amenities, necessary parking, as well as a staff accommodation caretaker unit. The applicant has also submitted the geotechnical report confirming the site is suitable for campground development, as well. Sorry, is the report stating the site is safe for intended use, and then also an initial environmental review report confirms the site is suitable for campground development. So the zoning amendment bylaw and the OCP amendment bylaw are being presented for consideration of reading. Further technical information may be requested through the referral process to come after first reading. And I wanted to highlight a couple of pieces that were discussed at the EAD committee. One was around access to the site and how that relates to the rail line. And if confirmed that the access is before the rail lines, so it's not really impacted there. And then yeah, I'll leave it up and happy to take any questions.
There.
Thank you. Quite excited to see this come forward and start there. I had an opportunity to tour the site. It's much needed asset. I was happy to see the inclusion of employee housing. I just wondered if there was any discussion to date around securing that for that use and not have it be part of the campground, like a short-term rental opportunity. Is have covenants around that been explored, or some mechanism to ensure that it's used for its intended purpose?
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, we currently have not explored covenants. The applicant wasn't interested. We put that offer out. If they are willing to go in, go through the covenant process, then they get a discount on their development application fees. And so the applicant wasn't interested at that time. We do have our zoning bylaw includes a definition of employee housing, and that wouldn't include short-term rentals. So we're partway there. We don't have covenants at this point as part of this proposal.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, it's not so much about the mechanisms, just ensuring that we have that secured. So if the zoning as proposed covers us off and we don't, and there's not a covenant's not needed to ensure that that's the outcome, then I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that what's being communicated as employee housing will in fact be employee housing going forward, and not, small motel usage or whatever, which if that's what they're proposing, I'd like to see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, Director Herford. Go ahead, Viv.
Have Director Rainbow.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to follow up on that just a little. What do we mean by employee housing? Now, clearly the proponent wants that housing there to make sure that he's got space for his employees to live there. But maybe if there were 3 or 4 units not being occupied, I think if we're looking at employees from the provincial campground, which is adjacent, to me, that would be acceptable. Maybe if we're looking at the employees of the Ferry Creek Golf Course, who are having to drive long distances now, that to me would be acceptable as well. That it wouldn't necessarily have to be employees of the proponent's campground. With shorter housing,
So
it's difficult getting staff.
through the chair, I just want to confirm the language that's currently in the proposed new zone. So this is the CC1 Campground Commercial 1 Zone Portal Cove. Not only does the intent sort of highlight that it's really a campground with employee housing and caretaker facilities that are sort of accessory to the permitted uses. It's sort of campground caretaker unit, which is defined, as well as employee housing, which is defined, and then it's comma associated with the campground. So right now it is intended to be associated with the campground, not just broad employee housing. So if the board wants that opened up to just employee housing in general, that would need to be changed. And I would need to go into, I'll have to look up the exact definition of employee housing, but it is a defined term in our Area G zoning bylaw.
Chair, can you remind me how many units there are being proposed?
Yes, through the chair, 16.
16.
1-bedroom units.
I'd like to see some kind of permitted use confirmation before second reading. I think that's really important for us to understand how 16 units will get used. But I think that this is a good project and I'd like to see this go forward. So that's my only comment on that. Anyone else? With anything else? Viv?
Sorry, we had a great discussion about this at the EID, and I entirely support this proposal, and it's a very good report. And I think Director Rainbow has something to add.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hold up this process.
Right.
No.
because I just made, but you know, just highlight that may be something we'd want to look at in the future. I wouldn't want to see 5 units sitting empty, for example, because he didn't have enough employees. So,
Okay.
We're just through the chair. I will just read out the definition in our area D zoning bylaw that's helpful for employee housing. Employee housing means the use of a dwelling unit for occupation only by employees or individuals related by blood, adoption, common law, marriage, or foster parenthood to an employee or cohabiting with an employee in a spousal relationship. And then this specific zone, it's employee housing, associated with the campground. So that's how we currently have it framed. The 16 units.
Super.
16 units because we anticipate using them all. So, like I say, I don't want to hold this up at that point.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion as presented in the agenda.
Thank you. Seconder? Tony? Okay. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. That is exciting. 6.1.2 North Arm Farm Brewery F&B Lounge GFA expansion zoning amendment. And this is for a public hearing waiver because it complies with the OCP. Do we have staff speaking to this?
Through the chair, I'm happy to provide a brief overview of the staff report if that's helpful.
Sure. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. So my name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will give a brief overview of the North Arm Farm Brewery Food and Beverage Lounge GFA expansion zoning amendment public hearing waiver report. So the SLRD received a zoning amendment application from North Arm Farm to increase the gross floor area of the food and beverage service lounge associated with the brewery. The site-specific text amendment would provide for a food and beverage service lounge with 125 meters squared of indoor gross floor area, 125 meters squared of outdoor gross floor area, as per the maximum set in the agriculture land reserve use regulation. And just to note, the current SLRD Area C zoning bylaw only provides for 60 meters squared of indoor and 60 meters squared of outdoor gross floor area. The application states that North Arm Farm holds a brewery manufacturer license, and it is understood that the intention is to build a food and beverage service land associated with this brewery use. So a geotechnical report has been submitted confirming the site is safe for intended use, and further technical information may be requested through the referral process to provincial agencies. And further building details will be addressed as part of the development permit and building permit processes. So right now we're just focusing on the use. That's what the zoning amendment is about. And as we've noted, the decision to waive a public hearing must be made by resolution with notice given prior to first reading. So that's why we're working through this step right now. I did want to highlight a couple, maybe I'll just highlight the process that we'll be working through here, because with this public hearing waiver, if the board, there would be a board resolution to waive the public hearing, we would have the public hearing waiver notice, and we will also have an AAC meeting scheduled for October 10th to review and provide input. And then we would be coming back to the board for first and second readings and referrals, third reading, MOTI approval, adoption. So that's just what we're looking at when we have a public hearing waiver process. We haven't had a lot of these in the SLRD, so we're all kind of working through that process a bit. So I did want to mention a couple things that were discussed at the EAB meeting, one being the Area C AAC meeting and just when the AAC would be engaged in this process. And just wanted to confirm that we have scheduled the meeting for October 10th, and that input will be packaged up along with any public hearing waiver submissions to be presented to the board at first reading. We also discussed the lot coverage ratio with this. So the ALC has policies for farm-related commercial, which brewery is considered a farm-related commercial use. And they have lot coverage ratios that they set out as what's sort of intended with these farm-related commercial uses. And staff can confirm that this application meets that ratio, or we're under that threshold. And then the other piece that we discussed was just the required parking as per our zoning bylaw, and the parking on site is already adequate, so we won't need to see additional parking or additional land being impacted or taken out of production. So those were two aspects. And the other thing I wanted to note, because we were kind of exploring the flood construction level, and I know District of Squamish is probably a bit more experienced with this because we don't have a lot of commercial uses in the ALR or just in the SLRD in general, but because this is a commercial use, our flood construction level doesn't have to be the same as it would if it was a residential. So that was something that we've been considering at a staff level too, as part of this zoning amendment. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Director Mack and Director Richmond.
I was just going to move option 1.
Question. I just understand a little bit more staff's rationale by recommending the waiver of the hearing.
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, as the zoning amendment is like the zoning amendment's aligned with the OCP, like the zoning will maintain as agriculture. It's just really a site specific exception where we would allow for that 125 meters rather than the 60 meters. We have the ability to waive public hearings when it's consistent with the OCP, and we've not related to this application, but just like a bigger picture conversation with ministry staff is they are really encouraging local governments to start using to start waiving public hearings when applications are consistent with the official community plans. And for us, this was a pretty as the zoning isn't changing, it's maintained as agriculture. It's not a significant zoning amendment that may need to go to a public hearing. And I also note that the public hearing waiver process still has a public process where there's a notice posted in 2 consecutive newspapers, the ads. We do neighbor notifications to all properties within 150 meters. And then like any submissions would be presented to the board. So.
Awesome, thank you.
And Director Rainbow. What's the gentleman?
I'm just kind of curious about this process, but so we have to have a resolution to waive the public hearing before we can, so that's going to take a month before we come back for first hearing. Would it not be quicker to have the public hearing? You know, it seems to be slowing it down and
So, I mean, through the chair, Director Needham can speak to some of these higher level conversations we've had at the province, sort of communicating the challenges with the legislation as it currently is presented in the Local Government Act and the Community Charter. One aspect is if we used to have like a permission to proceed report step, and that would be where the board would make a decision as to whether to hold a public hearing. But I'll just,
this is a situation where the province created some more regulations to allow for more waivers of public hearings, and it actually didn't save time. It was supposed to streamline things, and it didn't. It actually takes about the same amount of time to get something through. So myself and others have been in communication with some of the provincial staffers to try and figure out a way to streamline this and fix this issue that we've discovered.
Yeah, thank you.
Second motion.
Okay. So we have the motion on the floor. And are there any other comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
On that, for the second and third one.
It's just a notice to waive public hearing. It's not for second and third.
But it says read a first time, read a second time, read a third time. I'm just making sure we,
Are you on North Arm Farm?
yeah, I'm at the bottom of it.
Okay. We're at 6.1.3, zoning amendment for District Lot 2160, 2559 Blackwater Road.
Chair, would you like a presentation, a brief presentation on this one?
I think this was fairly cut and dried. If there's any questions, unless anyone would like a presentation.
We'll have to stop for 1 second here.
Okay,
We just passed the motion to waive the public hearing.
That's what that is.
You're on page. Where are you? Right, and so that's not in the report and that's not the recommendations that were put forward by staff. If you look on page 70 of the agenda, you'll see the options. Yeah, thank you.
You're looking at appendix A.
I'm looking at appendix A, then, so that doesn't count. Okay. Before we do move on, there's on page 4 of that, there's a typo. Talks about area B community plan, and obviously it's not. It's an area C.
That's right. It's not that to me.
All right, I think we're all back to 6.1.3.
okay, great. Thanks. So does anyone have any questions about this zoning amendment? Yes.
I would just like to move option 2.
Can you read that, Russell?
Direct staff to proceed with drafting a zoning and official community plan amendment with respect to this application.
Okay. Great. Do you have a seconder?
Director Rainbow second.
Okay. Comments?
Question.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Just confirming that my reading of the staff report is that this is not in line with OCP or the RGS. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone want to speak to why we're moving against staff recommendation?
I didn't hear that all. So
I'm just asking Russell why you want to move contrary to the staff recommendation.
because this whole valley is extremely rural. It's not in Birken or Pool Creek or Emerald Meadows or wherever. If you go and you go into that Blackwater country, they have no electricity to the properties. It's really rural. So, this individual has a fairly good sized lot that he would like to subdivide so that one of his family members can build a house there. And the reason for that is with that being put into the other person's name, they can actually go to the bank and get a mortgage.
Right.
Because we've had issues like this up the valley with farmers wanting to do the same thing. And with it being in, say, the parent's name, that doesn't benefit the family members. So, and like you say, it's It's not agricultural land. It's very remote. And I think this is actually a good use of that property.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone else?
I'm curious, given the policies that exist, that I can only assume were arrived at with that being the state when the current state that's there, like you said, very, very rural, lack of services as you described, that was the state when these policies were developed. So I'm just wondering what the change is and why that lens wasn't applied during the development of those policies that we're now contemplating going against. So I'm having a hard time reconciling these two
Well,
pieces.
I think at the time when these were put in place, you know, that, like I say, that was very rural, out of the way area. Probably nobody even anticipated anything like this. So they did a blanket zoning and coverage for all of that area. But it doesn't make sense. I mean, back to the same thing. Here we are with a shortage of housing, and now we're going to limit a person's ability to have a family member build a house on a fairly large piece of property, right? So I think we are going to have to look at some of this OCP and the zoning stuff for these, shall we say, rural areas. Times have changed dramatically. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't think we're making a motion today to reopen our OCP process, but I think that we should have a conversation at a future date where we can at least start this conversation in a more fulsome way. So thank you, Director Mack.
Yeah, just to
Any
make
other comments?
a quick comment that most of the properties in that area, as I understand it, are in the ALR and are large. Those are the properties we want to protect. We don't want people chopping up a 20 hectare or 40 hectare thing and chopping it into, you know, 5 hectare things, because that will take away land from farming. This little piece of property is sort of squished in there amongst the bigger places, and for that reason, I don't have a problem. And I argue quite strongly for farming things, and I don't have a problem with this particular one being subdivided. And I think that's how we need to look at it. We need to look at the specific location and the specific circumstances that this request is addressed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jen.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you through the chair. I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. While I appreciate that there are some personal circumstances embedded in this particular scenario, I think it goes against our RGS and our OCP for this area, as it's a non-settlement area. And I think it opens up a slippery slope. It's reducing the minimum parcel size from 40 hectares to 4. And I do think that there are other ways to work around this other than a zoning amendment. If people want to try and transfer some wealth intergenerationally and encourage other people to build on their properties, there's different financial mechanisms that you can enter into to support mortgage development. But I don't think that this is the right approach. And I think it opens us up for other opportunities for settling in areas that we've identified through our RGS that we don't want to see growth in.
Fair.
You have to let Matt, Jen.
Well, adding one house is not exactly a huge amount of growth. Yeah, we continually talk about the shortage of housing, trying to get people to be able to build homes. And then on the other hand, we go, no, we don't want that because an RGS or an OCP that was put in many, many years ago, we're going to follow that. The world has changed dramatically. And like I say, this is still a very rural area. So you're not going to have a subdivision go in and somebody build a Walmart or a McDonald's there. That's never going to happen. So, I mean, all we're doing is we're just making it harder for this individual. to move along and provide for his family.
I don't see any other hands. Director Herbert.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion here today. I had a challenge with this when on first read, and I appreciate the perspectives expressed. I do think that looking at sort of overall cumulative effect and overall how we craft our policy, we are in a housing crisis, but it's not. I don't think that it's responsible to put that above all the other principles that sort of underpin our policies around concentrating development into settlement areas. So it's so that those folks are, for all the reasons that we know, that those folks, we can service them with amenities that they need, and we don't end up with what is essentially sprawl. Now, whether it's the first step of it or well down the path as far as from a sprawl perspective and settling these other areas. So I'm unfortunately not gonna be able to support this at this point. I do welcome a discussion going forward around RGS and OCP policy to better contemplate where we are from a housing perspective, but I don't think this meets the bar for me at this point.
And Director Rainbow.
If this gentleman decides, find some other way to build a house on that lot, we can't stop that, I don't think, can we? So we're actually not contributing to sprawl or extra growth or anything. You know, he wants to subdivide it so that it makes it easier for his family. It makes it easier to get some money for it. You know, a loan from the bank to facilitate that. If we say no, then yeah, we're just forced them to find another way. But we can't prevent the house being built.
I think staff wanted to say something.
Through the chair, the zoning bylaws do include set up the number of dwelling units per parcel, and that's based on parcel size.
Yeah.
So there's still the zoning bylaw sets out the number of dwellings, and then there's bylaw enforcement options if people are building without permits and whatnot. So to get a building permit, you need to meet the zoning.
So what is the permissible amount of buildings?
That's a good point. If it's is it 40 hectares? I'm not on the.
This one is 4 hectares.
It's almost 10 acres.
Do you mind having a look at the see zoning to see our
So we're just checking the number of permitted buildings on this particular
resource
site currently.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ms. Koterniak is on vacation this week, and she's been handling this file.
So what's the zoning?
R1RM.
And it's, how big is it?
4 hectares.
Then, yeah, they're going to be, leave your 1, 2. Yeah, so on parcels 2 hectares or greater, you're allowed a second single family dwelling. So they're already allowed 2 single family dwellings.
And that's 2 hectares and up, that's how the zoning works.
Right.
So if that were to be subdivided into 2 parcels, there would be the potential for 4 buildings on there. Thanks.
And Director Mack.
I can just see how this frustrates people beyond belief. You know, we're sitting here, we all have homes, we live in a community, and we want everybody in the regional district to live in a community. Well, there's places in this regional district that will never, as I said, have a Walmart or a McDonald's or whatever. They don't even have a gas station or a corner grocery store. You know, so there's this urban sprawl thing. That's just, that's kind of reaching for it. So I'll leave it at that.
Jen's video's off, but I don't see anyone else wanting to make comments or questions. And so.
I'll make a comment. I think we need to look at these applications as one-offs. I know one-offs may, people will look at it and look at it and say, well, geez, maybe I'll try it now. But we need to look at them as one-offs, and I'm going to vote for it.
So it has been moved and seconded, and anything else? Should we call the question then? So we'll have a show of hands on this. There's all in favor, and I can't see Lori, Jen.
Maybe all.
Just opposed.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just looking for the opposed. 1, 2, 3. And no one on the
What's the
screen is
third one?
opposing. Director Rachel.
Alternate, so.
Okay. Jen, are you with us? So there's 3 opposed. And should I ask, do you want your names recorded, or are you automatically recording who opposes? We do, okay. So those in opposition, those names have been recorded. And that's it. Motion carries. We move on to number 7, bylaws. 7.1. We're on to Tiger Bay Development Corporation, or the zoning amendment application bylaw. They're coming at 1.
I think let's do a few more things before.
Special events bylaw. Are people ready for that one? 7.2. Okay. Request for decision, special events bylaw 1247-1212, amendment bylaw number 1823, 2023. Would staff like to speak to it?
Sure. Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is really just a cleanup bylaw to make it clear that the farmland special event is a special event as per our special event permit bylaw. It was just a point of clarification. Gatherings for an event are permitted uses on lands that are designated as farm under the Assessment Act. And so this bylaw is just cleaning up the bylaw a little bit to make it very clear that the farmland events are included.
I'll move that.
Makes sense to me. Okay, moved by Director Stoner, second by Director Banana. You have anyone opposed? Being none, that motion is carried. Oh, there's 2 resolutions.
I move the option.
So did you move both of them?
I moved we have to do them separately. So I moved the first one and now I'm moving the second.
Ah, thank you.
No,
That's very convenient. Okay.
I'll second.
And it's seconded by Director Rainbow. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried the second. So they're both. Yeah. 7.3, a request for decision on permissive tax exemption bylaw number 1824/2023. And staff are coming in for that. Thank you. Suzanne is here. It's the Bronx. Welcome.
Good morning. Before you is the permissive tax exemption bylaw as requested to be completed at the July board meeting. And in the report, it shows the potential tax implications. Of course, this is using 2023 information as the 2024 budget hasn't been completed. So I'll just take any questions on this bylaw.
Director Rainbow.
Yeah. Suzanne, is this just again for just the 1 year, or are we doing?
Yeah, so this is an annual process. If the board wishes it to be longer, it has to have electoral approval. So we would have to get, I think, an AAP process completed if you wanted to extend it to up to 5 years.
So,
But an annual review is probably preferable. So you can double check that this is still something you want to exempt.
I was just looking at saving some time because we're doing it every year, approving it every year. Whether, when it says 2 to 10 years, we can do a span of 2 to 10 years. So maybe even if we just did it in 2 years.
Well, so
Maybe not this year.
it gives
but
those groups clarity if they have a longer runway, if they know that they're gonna have that exemption for a longer period of time, which is why the 10 years is allowed. But if it's an AAP, that's a process. That's I'm surprised at that. Can you describe what would involve what would be involved with that, Director LaFrance?
So what I understand is it's just the same as a service establishment bylaw amendment process. So we'd have to go produce all the documentation for their required bylaw, send it out to all of Area C, I'm assuming, because Area C taxes are impacted. And if 10% people don't want this to happen, it'll basically not pass. So it's about 4 to 5 months of a process. And for this particular permissive tax exemption, it's due to recreational use. And so, if anything ever changed during that 10-year span, say we did go through an AAP and received the approval of the electorate, it would be difficult to change that after the fact if something did change within the actual property and for example, it not being recreational in nature. So in a way, the annual review is preferable in my mind.
That's fine.
Okay. The electorate get no say in that. It's just something we do around this table.
As their representatives.
Yeah.
I'll move. Oh, sorry, Director Stoner. Just Director Stoner, you did have your hand up.
I was gonna move first 3 readings of bylaw 1824/2023.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Where are we?
Yep, I'll move adoption.
Seconded. Comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And that was 7.4, right?
7.3.
7.3. Let's go to 7.4. And this is the Britannia Beach Heritage Buildings tax exemption. Would someone
Yes.
like to, same content, right?
Same idea.
And Director Stoner has a question.
Go ahead.
Director Demare.
I just wanted to seek clarification. Was my understanding that we can actually provide permissive tax exemptions to for-profit entities, given it'd be assistance to business? And so I'm just curious how we've worked around that for the heritage component.
It's
You
all
can do
within
it if it's
the
a community benefit, right? Sorry, Director LaFrance.
Right. It's all within the bylaw for the heritage exemption. So it's bylaw 1831, which was adopted in 2023, that provides the heritage, what's the word I'm looking for? Status, yes. And so with that heritage status, that is an applicable permissive tax exemption allowable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were able to give it to Whistler Blackcomb when they built the peak to peak. The peak to peak had it for 10 years. So very much a for-profit business. Do we have a mover on this?
Hold on, we had, Director Demare had a question.
Oh, go ahead, Director Demare.
The Bridge River Valley Community Association has 3 properties in Area A that are registered with the SLRD registry and the provincial registry. So I'm just curious how this one came about and how would the BRCA ask for the same thing?
Mr. Franz?
The background will have to be discussed by somebody else. I don't know the background of this whole heritage development. I don't know if Kim is still around to speak to how it came about, but basically it was just a request due to the developer using the heritage buildings within Britannia Beach. That's as much as I know.
But I think to Director Demare's point, they can apply, the society can apply for this permissive tax exemption. There's a process though.
Yeah, so the process would be just requesting it, I guess, first, and then we'd have to review what would be exempt, and I'd have to bring it to the board for approval. Same, but we would need a request.
Thank you.
Okay.
We need the agreement as well. I believe the agreement, I mean, approval from the board, but an agreement in order to move ahead with that status at heritage, and then the exemption coming off that. So is that,
We have the
that
status.
application come
We've
through,
already got the stats
or yes, finance? Yes, okay.
through.
Yeah, I mean, this is a part of the Britannia Beach revitalization project. And so essentially these sorts of exemptions are in place to encourage developers to preserve heritage buildings. And in so doing, a tax exemption is given to them because it can come at quite a cost in order to preserve those buildings. And it would be very easy for people to just tear them down because there's not a lot of protection with the registry. But with these tax exemptions, it's a way to encourage heritage preservation.
Yeah, I'm just curious because the Braylor and Pioneer Mines office, which is a heritage building, is in that process. And I just wonder, maybe that staff could have reached out and said that, you know, you can apply for this tax exemption.
Well,
And it was never done. So, you know, I mean, moving forward, yes, I can communicate with the BRBCA.
And Director Rainbow?
yeah, I'm just going back to Britannia Beach, that these old buildings that were sitting there, that's all they were. They were old buildings. And it was the developer that wanted to have them created, designated as heritage, knowing that it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more to get them up to standard than if they had just pulled them all down. So I cannot see getting in the way of giving them an exemption, a tax exemption. The region as a whole benefits from what has happened at Britannia.
It was a good move. It's a beautiful thing that they're doing, and the report is lovely to read. Other comments?
I'll move first 3 readings.
Moved by Director Stoner.
Second.
Second by Director Burford. The first 3 readings. Jen, you want to declare on anyone? Seeing none. Carried. And then the bylaw, Director Burford. Seconded by Director Stoner, that bylaw number 1821/20, blah, blah, be adopted.
Call the question.
Call the question. Okay,
All in favor? Good.
yep.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah,
Yes,
on to
we are.
8.1.
Verbal update.
Over to Nikki.
I just wanted to take a moment to sort of acknowledge all those individuals in the wildfires. We haven't really had too much more conversation since a lot of the structure losses were identified, not only in Gun Lake area, but there was one property lost along the High Line as well. And I just also wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge staff for all of their hard work in communicating with all of those residents, the communications that came out of that, and really supporting each other in working their way through the EOC during the wildfire events. So I just wanted to take a moment to do that. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you, Director Demare.
Yeah, I didn't mention it at the EAD meeting, but I did have a conversation with one of the incident commanders, because they kept on changing the vendor range, incident commander. And he commented to me that he's been throughout BC as an incident commander, and the EOC, the SLRD EOC was the best one to work with that he's ever had. It's a pretty good compliment from one of the incident commanders.
Nice to hear. Not surprising at all. Yes, Director Matt.
Yeah, I just want to say I think our people did an amazing job, everybody. When you're in that situation and everything's kind of critical all the time, there's a very high stress level there, and you have to know how to manage that. And I think Mark did an amazing job, and you did an amazing job. So yeah, it's wonderful. When you got good people looking after you in times when things aren't so good, it's a good thing. And we're very fortunate. So thank you.
I kind of feel somewhat fortunate as well in that I'm here. I've heard all this from afar because I've been sitting down in Furry Creek. One day we had a little bit of smoke and that's it, you know, and believe me, we all recognize how lucky we have been. And, so I'm glad to hear these kinds of things about the performance of our staff. Well done.
The next item is Q2 regional budget. What would you like to move receipt? Move receipt of the CAO
So moved.
report, moved by Director Burford, seconded by Director Matt. If unopposed, motion carried. Then would you like to move on to Q2 regional budget here at 9 minutes after noon? We have a presentation at 1, so we can keep going.
Yeah, we can 12:30.
Okay, great. So, oh, here's Colin Hodgkins. Okay. Ben, thank you. Staff, would you like to proceed? Go ahead, Ms. LaFrance.
Yeah, so I'm assuming we're on 8.2 then?
Also. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I'm the Director of Finance, and I'm hoping Colin will turn on his camera soon and I'll introduce him. So this is Colin Hodgins, the new Deputy Director of Finance, and he'll be presenting the Q2 financials, and I'll be here to support him.
Welcome, Colin. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, it's nice to meet you. And yeah, I'll be presenting the Q2 financials for the SLRD. You'll see in the package that we've written a report this year to kind of highlight some of the key items from the financials. Really, we're focusing on how revenues and expenses are pacing against budget, what the reserve balances are, and we've also kind of provided a little note on how much of the monthly expenses that reserve balance will cover, as well as any other key items from those services. In addition to that report, I was just going to highlight a few other items that I think would be beneficial to go over quickly. For Cost Center 1000, General Government Services, the BC Hydro payment in lieu of taxes increased by $17,000 this year, as the percentage was 5.1 versus our budgeted 4%. For Cost Center 1200, Land Planning and Zoning, the developer fees for Tiger Bay Lands and Britannia Oceanfront have both been overspent this year. The reason for this is that we've seen a longer timeline for those projects, as well as a higher level of engineering review. The planning department is planning to review the developer fee structure in 2024 in light of the current inflation rates we're seeing. For Cost Center 1400, Building Inspection Services, total revenues are exceeding budget. They're currently at 82% of our budget. Therefore, we're expecting to see a large surplus in this service in 2023. For Cost Center 1900, Pemberton Refuse Grounds, both service revenues and expenses are pacing slightly ahead of budget. We did budget for $60,000 of short-term borrowing for 2023. At this time, we're still unsure if we're going to require this short-term funds. However, we're hoping to avoid, if we can, just due to the high interest rates we're seeing right now. For Cost Center 2706, Goldbridge Water, expenses are pacing to be over budget. Currently, only 21% of the budget remains. We are expecting to see a deficit in the service this year. This is mainly due to increased site service and maintenance due to water leaks and pump problems we've had in this service. We don't have an operational surplus for this reserve, and we have been using BC Hydro payment in lieu of taxes funds to fund the operations for this service, or some of the operations. For Cost Center 2804, Pinecrest Sewer, this is another one where expenses are trending to be over budget. Currently only have 37% remaining. This is due to a project to replace the membrane in the system. This was roughly $27,000, and we do have $24,000 of operational surplus reserve for this service. And then the last one I'll comment on is Cost Center 3000, Electoral Area Community Park Services. All the reserve funds for this service, which was roughly $25,000, have been transferred to the new area specific regional parks and trail services, which are Cost Centers 3005 through 3008. And that's all the notes I have, so I'll open it up for any questions.
We have a question. Thank you for your report from Director Demare.
Thank you, Colin. I really appreciate the documentation at the start of this with all the comments made and all the accounts. I've got a question on 1000 general government, and that's regarding the COVID restart 90,000. I thought we'd used all that up. Just wondering if that is still there and what it's going to be used for.
So I'll answer that one. So the COVID restart grant was allocated previously, so we're still chipping away at those projects. There are some allocations that might not go through. So for example, the regional connectivity project, I think there was 30,000 to 40,000 allocated for that, but we still have yet to start that project. I'm going to be looking online for more information from the province. They haven't really provided much more details since this original grant was received. So I'm just gonna be doing a few calls and we'll have a report to the board about this COVID restart grant, if we have to reallocate it or if it just is, they want it sent back, because there originally was potentially a deadline for the usage of this fund. When it first was released, they said by 2022, but there hasn't been any more communication sent directly to me. So I'm going to be searching for some more information on that grant.
Okay, thank you.
Director Stoner.
Just on that, is it something that we want to just keep allocating unless we hear otherwise from the province?
Yeah, I think that would be my suggestion.
Want to double check. Fantastic.
And another question from Director Stoner.
Yeah, also on the general reserve, we received just over 1.5 for the Growing Communities Fund. And I think that's also just kind of sitting there with uncertainty as to how we want to operationalize. Is that going to come with the 2024 budget, a plan for that money?
Yeah, so the province has requested that we allocate this fund 100% before the end of the year for projects that'll be spent within 5 years. And I'm currently reviewing all of that right now. It's been a little bit delayed due to workload and the EOC and everything like that, but it will be coming in October.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'll move receipt.
Director Stoner is moving receipt, seconded by the Mayor.
And just briefly, I'll speak to it and just thank staff for this update. It is really helpful. As we've talked about during budget cycle, the SLRD budgets are tricky, but this is a really helpful interim report. And so thanks to Mr. Hodgins for bringing it forward, and Ms. LaFrance for responding to some of the questions.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So the report is accepted. Conversation, call the question.
Favorite meals?
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. All right. Rainbow would like to move on to 8.3, request for decision, Regional Affordable Housing Forum, the draft plan.
Excellent,
Please
thank you.
proceed, staff.
Thank you. So my name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner here at Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I'll provide a brief overview of the staff report, and the recommendations are that the SLRD board receive, review, and provide input on the draft Regional Affordable Housing Plan attached as Appendix A, that the SLRD board directs staff to convene a Regional Affordable Housing Forum in the first quarter of 2024 with staff to work with the SLRD board chair and members to schedule a date, and that the SLRD board provide up to 15,000 in the 2024 budget to convene the Regional Affordable Housing Forum. So back in April of 2023, there was a committee of the whole meeting, and at that meeting, the SLRD board resolved that staff develop a plan to facilitate a collaborative regional affordable housing forum, drawing upon existing housing experience in the region, and bring the plan back to a future board meeting. And so that is the intention of this staff report and the draft plan. And just wanted to highlight some of the direction and the commentary at that committee. The whole meeting was for staff to explore opportunities to convene this forum, to build off of the 2016 elected officials forum on affordable housing that was part of the SLRD regional growth strategy review process. Other things to note, so the provincial legislative changes around housing are set to take place in the fall of 2023. And so staff are recommending to convene the Regional Affordable Housing Forum in the first quarter of 2024 rather than 2023 to allow for these legislative changes to inform the forum discussions and presentations, as well to allow for budget considerations. And really, the forum will provide opportunities to share, learn, reflect, and collaboratively generate ideas for local and regional action. I did want to just touch base with our regional growth strategy. which outlines affordable housing, or it recognizes affordable housing as a regional issue, needing collaborative approaches that build upon common tools and techniques to support a range of quality affordable housing across the region. I also want to acknowledge that the SLRD and member municipalities have been working to address affordable housing issues and opportunities by implementing a variety of policies, targets, and tools. So there's a lot of work underway. We have the SLRD Housing Need and Demand Study, and a Regional Affordable Housing Forum will support implementation of this demand study and specifically the recommendations under increased collaboration, explore partnerships. Under the regional growth strategy, goal 3, there's a number of policies. I won't get into it, but just wanted to highlight that the Regional Affordable Housing Forum will support implementation of actions under this goal 3. And I also wanted to note that the SLRD will be considering a regional growth strategy review in 2024. And so there's opportunities for the outcomes of this forum to inform consideration of that review, as well as potential areas for new or expanded policy. So those pieces could tie in well. Following the committee of the whole meeting, SLRD staff met with the RGS steering committee in June of 2023. And one of the topics at that meeting was sort of this affordable housing forum. I just wanted to highlight some of the pieces that came forward through that discussion and recommendations from, so those are all the planning managers in the regional district. And some potential topics that were suggested include presentations on each of the member municipality and SLRD housing needs reports, various member municipality housing action plans and strategies, updates from the housing authorities and societies operating in the region, update from provincial representatives, legislative changes, connection to regional transportation, and these have all been included in the draft plan that's presented. I also wanted to note, just because this was discussed at the committee of the whole meeting, but there at this staff level, at least, there was general agreement that a regional housing authority may not be the best tool, but that there could be opportunities to explore the role of existing housing authorities or societies in managing new units, and particularly in Howe Sound East, where we see the largest number of units being proposed. I won't get into, we sort of discussed the legislative changes already. In terms of next steps, following the SLRD board's review and input on the draft plan, and provided the board allocates funds and direct staff to convene a forum. Next steps include this budget to set dates and then to look at venues. But I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
That was very thorough.
Director Stoner.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for the really exciting ideas around the forum. I think there's so much work going on this file at all levels, and I think having a regional lens to it will make a lot of sense. So looking forward to it. And I think the timing pushing it into 2024 makes good sense. 2 questions. The first is around budget. So I see that there's 5,000 there for the facilitator, and I just want to ensure that that is enough to cover some support for structuring the event as well as actually facilitating the day, recognizing that our staff are really full on capacity, that there is some support there in terms of the logistics for that event, not just day of facilitation.
So through the chair, the budget that's being put forward, the 15,000 and the 5,000 specific for the facilitator, that would likely just be day of facilitation cost. So if the board wants to allocate additional funds in terms of supporting the organization of the forum, that would be in addition to that 15,000.
Director Rainbow.
Are we assuming the SLRD will assume the full cost of this, or are the municipalities going to support it financially as well?
Yeah, so through the chair, the direction that we received in April was for was to convene the forum, and so this would be SLRD budget, which the member municipalities contribute to.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that covered your point,
Yeah.
okay,
I did have a second
okay,
point,
Director Stoner again.
I just want to make sure and appreciate that you included the Squamish Nation and the Lillooet Nation. Specifically, Squamish Nation has HEM Housing, which is their housing society, and it would likely get referred eventually, but just I think including them from the outset, given how much work is going on under HEM, would be really important.
We'll just take a pause, well, and let Mike back in.
Thoughts on the housing?
For me?
Any thoughts on the regional housing forum?
I agree with everything Jenna said.
Did send a note to me to tell her internet, Lillooet's just fantastic for our internet. She's bopping on and off a little bit, but she's following everything. She's fine.
Do we have to deal with these three that separately, or can they all be moved at once? Then I'd like to consider this.
Okay, so we're just on 8.3, Director Richmond. And Director Rainbow is moving the three dots that are there.
So can I just, and sorry, I had to just run over to the office, but sorry if this is us, but totally support going down this road. As we've talked about before, I'm just wondering if we've talked about how we're going to talk to other staff to maybe get input on what the agenda or the format looks like. Sorry, and saw that.
Sure. Thank you. So through the chair, we did have preliminary discussions with the Regional Growth Strategy Steering Committee, which includes the planning managers from each of the member municipalities and the SRD, and they provided preliminary input, which informs sort of the draft plan that's here today. And then staff would have the opportunity to have more in-depth conversations at that staff level with each of the planning departments. Recognizing that there's a lot of work already going on, and I think the forum really provides an opportunity for everyone to share the work that's happening, work that's planned, as well as hear from hopefully provincial representatives on sort of where the province is at.
Awesome, thank you.
So moved by Director Rainbow. Seconded by Director Richmond.
I'd like to propose an amendment. That the third clause be amended to read that the SLRD board provide up to $20,000 in the 2024 budget to convene the Regional Affordable Housing Forum, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Seconded by Director Berger.
I'm proposing a slightly higher budget amount because we heard from staff that the facilitation costs included in the budget are just for day of facilitation, but not actual staff support for organizing the event, which is a lot of effort for this level of regional forum that we're proposing. And so I would like to give staff a little bit more capacity to bring somebody on a little bit earlier to help organize the actual structure of the event and make sure that we're getting adequate input from the various partners to make sure it's as robust of a forum as possible.
Makes sense.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Call the question. Any opposed? That. Okay, that amendment is carried, and so we'll go back to voting on the three dots.
That's amended. That's amended.
As amended. Thanks. Anyone opposed? All right, those three as amended are carried. Thank you.
I'd like to propose a motion.
Thank you. We will break for lunch, which is ready.